Struggling to get rid of your tennis elbow? Here's some of the best exercises you can do to fix this. What's going on, guys? Dr. Nick Bonforte here. Today's video, we're going all over tennis elbow. But before we dive into the exercises and stuff, we have to figure out what we're actually dealing with, and really if it is tennis elbow. Tennis elbow, or lateral epicondylitis, is just a term used for overusage of what's called the extensor muscles of our forearm. So the muscles that bring our wrist backwards, these muscles go and attach to the lateral aspect or the outside aspect of the elbow. When there's a lot of load and excessive stress and strain to this region, it becomes painful to the lateral elbow, commonly referred to as tennis elbow. Some things to kind of be aware of when we're dealing with this and kind of isolating if we're actually dealing with a tennis elbow or a lateral epicondylitis issue is you bring your middle finger up a little bit, and then from there, if you just try to push your middle finger down and you resist it, if that produces some of the discomfort that you're actually feeling, it's more than likely you are dealing with that type of lateral epicondylitis or tennis elbow issue, which then can give you some insight on things that you can actually do to then fix this. Now, the idea, again, behind all of this is it's just overusage to the wrist extensor muscles to this region. So depending on the severity, we have to calm things down and then build it back up to then take on more and more stress and load. There could be a variety of reasons why this can happen. It could be from a lack of mobility issues at the wrist. It could be a lack of mobility issues at the shoulder. It could be strength issues, a combination of stuff. But let's go over some of the top exercises in this video. Let's get to it. So the beginning phases with addressing tennis elbow, we have to start with isometrics. And what we're doing is isometrically loading all the extensor muscles, the wrist extensors, to help beef up the tissue to take a bigger punch and ultimately reduce pain. So we're gonna be using a dumbbell for demo purposes. Now the idea is we go into wrist extension and we just hold this position. Now the weight and gravity wants to put my wrist going into this position, but we're resisting against it and we're just holding it isometrically, which targets all of the wrist extensor muscles into the elbow. When we do this, we're helping improve that strength and capacity to this position. Now, if we can't use a dumbbell, we could perform the same concept by just using our hand, and we're just thinking of pushing it down and we're resisting against that. So from here, I wanna think about myself pushing my wrist down, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna hold that position and push down, and I'm resisting up into my hand. What that does is the same concept with the dumbbell to load all of the wrist extensor muscles. So from here, I'm holding isometrically for a period of time and then relaxing. Now, the idea with isometrics, I typically like to range it about 30 seconds or 15 seconds, up to 30 seconds, or potentially even higher. But the idea is you're working on getting time under tension to the muscles. Typically, about 2 minutes of time under tension to the muscles, which produces some change, and you want to be doing that multiple times per day for a given set time period. So if you do anything less, like 3 sets of 10 seconds, there's just not enough time under tension to actually work on this area. Another thing to keep in mind is the positioning of the elbow when we do this. So that whether it's self-assistance or with the dumbbell, the idea is when our elbow straightens, we put all the wrist extensor muscles on length. Now, we don't function well on length because we don't really get ourselves in positions to then adapt positions. So it's a lot harder and a lot more painful when you are dealing with tennis elbow to be on a lengthened position and perform an isometric. So variations of the elbow are going to be dependent on where you're at. But ultimately, you want to be positioning your elbow from a bent position to a more straightened position and working out through all different ranges of motion to isometrically load so that you're getting prepared through different ranges and not just one set motion. So you want to be prepared here to load this tissue. Then you want to put on a little bit more length, perform it to prepare the tissue, and you work through different ranges. That's how you ultimately beef up the tissue more for longevity. Hey, real quick, if you're liking this content, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It really helps out with my channel and I really do appreciate it. All right, back to the content. Now, after isometrics, we want to eccentrically load the extensor muscles. So bringing the wrist from wrist extension into wrist flexion in a controlled fashion to help control it under lengthening positions. So we'll use the dumbbell for support or for demo purposes. Now from here, I bring my wrist into wrist extension And then from here, I slowly let the dumbbell and gravity win by bringing my wrist into wrist flexion, which loads all of the wrist extensor muscles. Then from here, I assist it back up into the position, and then I repeat, slowly letting it drop down, really working this area. This ultimately help improve the strength and load to the wrist extensor muscles in a lengthening fashion. The idea of bringing it back into the position is so that we're not just overloading it by going down and up, which is the eccentric and then the concentric part. You want to just help bias the eccentric part. So when you do that, you assist it back up so that it's not going through the concentric part, and then you slowly let it go down, and then you bring it back up and repeating it. Now eccentrics, I like to get about more reps, so 15 reps where you're fatiguing it out, multiple sets. Now the same concept here applies with the dumbbell and with the wrist position. If you don't have a dumbbell, you can perform the same exact thing, just assisting it into wrist flexion or resisting down. I'm thinking of resisting against that, but I'm letting myself win, working all of these muscles as I do that. Now, the concept with the elbow applies here too. You want to work until it's straightened more out, and you perform the same idea. That will help improve the strength to this area in a different elbow position versus here. Being bent will be a lot easier than being straight, but you ultimately want to improve different angles of motion with the elbow with eccentrics as well. We also have to consider stretching out the wrist flexor muscles that go like this, because if all of this is stiff and tight, when we bring our wrist back, we have to power through all of this stiffness. And when we do that, it puts a lot of load through the lateral aspect of the elbow, and we have to put more stress to this region, contributing to the tennis elbow or the lateral epicondylitis. So from here, we're stretching out the wrist flexors by just getting on a table or a bench like this. We're putting our wrists into wrist extension and leaning back a little bit until we feel a nice stretch into the forearm flexors. Now from here, you don't want to just hold out on a stretch like this for 30 seconds and then call it a day. We want to build isometric strength actually in this position so that it can actually go further and further into the range with less resistance. Because if this is, again, super stiff, it won't let your wrist bend backwards. So from here, I'm going to hold this, say, for an example, 30 seconds. Then after 30 seconds, I want to think about pushing my wrist down into the table. So from here, I'm done, say for an example, with the stretch. From here, I'm pushing now down into the table, and I'm feeling my forearm flexors work. So I'm pushing down like this isometrically, and I'm holding that isometric for an example, 10 seconds. Then after that, I relax, and then I bring myself further into the stretch until I feel an increased stretch here. And then I'm going to repeat the exact scenario where I hold this for the stretch period. Then after that, I push down into the table for an isometric, feeling my wrist flexors work. Then after that, I relax and I bring myself further into the stretch, and I could repeat that for about 4 cycles. An example scenario right there for the stretch and contract relaxation. But the idea is we're stretching all of the wrist flexors so that we ultimately reduce the stiffness and the tightness there so that we can bend the wrist backwards with greater ease. That's important so that we're not fighting through all of this stiffness here and overloading the lateral elbow, contributing to tennis elbow. I hope this video was helpful in learning more things that you can start to do to actually fix your tennis elbow. And if you did find value in this video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, like this post, and turn on your post notifications so you never miss a video from me. Also, if you want to learn more about things that you could do to get out of pain or improve flexibility or do what you want to do without being restricted by nagging aches and pains, then click the link below and schedule your free discovery call with me or one of my team members just to dive a little bit more into things that is going on and potential things that you could do to actually solve this problem. On this call, there's no risks, there's no obligations on this call. It's just a call to chat a little bit more. Again, if you're interested in that, click the link below, schedule the call, and if you do decide to schedule the call, I look forward to chatting with you soon. This is Dr. Nick. I'll talk to you next time.